You're welcome back to Breakfast Central. More reactions have continued to trail the nomination of ambassadorial nominees by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now, joining us for this discussion, the second part, is Public Affairs Analyst Mr. Nelson Ekujimi and Media Strategist Ayodele Adio. A warm welcome to you, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us on Breakfast Central. I would like to begin with our guest in the studio, Mr. Ekujimi. These nomination took 2 years and 2 months, and Nigerians are wondering why did it take so long. But the nominations have finally been met. The ADC opposition parties have condemned it. The People's Democratic Party have condemned it. They say it's full of party loyalists and it's a way of rewarding cronyism. What's your response to that?
Well, thank you very much. Good morning. I love the way you were very cautious in pronouncing my surname. Mm-hmm. Maybe you were cautious because you knew I could take you to court over it. But don't worry, you are free. I will pardon you if you make any mistake. Yeah. Well, with regards to the condemnation by the ADC and PDP, it's not unexpected. You know, we have a situation in our hands today whereby opposition political parties, even if you say the president is inviting Jesus to Nigeria, without even waiting to know whether it is the real Jesus of Nazareth, the first thing they run out to condemn. So it's allowed. Looking at the list, I think that is a very good list. It's made up of eminent Nigerians who are qualified, people who have cut their teeth in the public service, as well as those in the private sector. So the list, as far as I'm concerned, if you say it's a reward for political patronage, so be it. So long as the persons who have been nominated are Nigerians and they have met the statutory requirements to be nominated.
A name that keeps popping up when people and analysts look at this list from a general perspective is the name of the former INEC chairman who superintended over the elections that brought in President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. They say it's almost like a reward for helping him get into power, that it shouldn't happen. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think anybody submitting to that line of thought can be accused of infantilism, because the INEC chairman presided over an institution of state set up by law, and he had a tenure, and that tenure was explored to the fullest according to law. When you say the former INEC chairman superintended over the election, yes, he was the INEC chairman, he was just one man. So are they saying that the INEC chairman just sat down in his office and wrote results of election, or he played his role as the chief returning officer to announce the presidential election results outcome? There are others in states. We had returning officer, state returning officer for the elections. So when persons come to try and taint a man who has contributed his quota diligently and impartially while in office, because as we speak, nobody has been able to bring up one allegation with proof. Those that lost the election, they went to the Presidential Election Tribunal. The justices of the tribunal unanimously, or are they telling us the INEC chairman made the tribunal judges to vet the election?
So you support the list in its entirety?
Absolutely, okay. Absolutely.
All right. So there's no infraction. There's nothing.
Nobody has done anything wrong.
Okay, we'll come back to that because we have more questions on that. Let's go to Ayodele Adio, who's online joining us as well for this conversation. Adio, please kindly share with us what your thoughts are concerning the list. The names, when you saw them, what was your take?
Well, to be honest, I didn't have any sort of reaction. I think that to a very large extent, we seem to be focusing on the ant and staring at the camel. Because the truth is, ambassadors are really and truly supposed to advance Nigeria's foreign policy objectives in many of the countries that they are posted into. But the reality, unfortunately, is that over the last decade or so, Nigeria's foreign policy has been quite dismal. And the truth is, we've not been able to spread our wings or do the things that we did in the heydays of our foreign policy, glorious days. For instance, the 1970s and perhaps in the 1990s, when, we were the dominant military power in West Africa, and ECOMOG intervened in countries like Guinea-Bissau, we intervened in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, and we sort of exuded military dominance in the region, and we went about dealing with civil unrest in certain countries, providing stability across the region, and we stood for something at the time. And of course, in the 1970s, as you knew, we were the moral compass of the continent. We stood against apartheid in South Africa. We stood with the Angolans at the time, whether it was President Muritala Obasanjo at the time. We had a proper Africa cornerpiece, centerpiece of our foreign policy at the time. And that's when we had the technical core, where we exported talents to many of these countries that didn't have enough talent to run their bureaucracy. And so those were the glory days of our foreign policy. Unfortunately, we faltered, since those glory days. And really and truly, I see a lot of debate about the persons who have been appointed, their competence or otherwise. But the reality is they aren't going to be doing anything. They can't move the needle across the continent or in any parts of the world. We seem to have lost our reckoning as a country. We seem to have lost the kind of influence that once held sway in Africa. Not even our neighbors in the Sahel have any respect for us. They put together a G6. Nigeria is not on the table. The Chadians and the Nigerians do not want to sit with us on the same table to coordinate insecurity in the Sahel. So, we're just, that giant of Africa standing on spaghetti legs. And so whoever we send to many of these countries, it makes entirely no difference. So, spending energies debating on the capacity or the capabilities of the people appointed, for me, is neither here nor there. Because the real problem, the crust of the matter is, our foreign policy objective has been dismal. As a country, we've lacked the kind of reputation that we had in the 70s as the giant of Africa, and perhaps in the early 1990s. And so we really can't, because if you looked at our foreign policy objective, whether it's economic diplomacy, for instance, or rescuing Nigerians abroad, or pursuing trade and investments across the continent and perhaps across the world, how are we going to do that given the current state of our country? So to a very large extent, I just think that we're staring at the ant and ignoring the camel. They will make absolutely no difference. And so it's whether you call it reward for political participation or otherwise,
Ayodele,
it just makes no difference.
If I may comment here, you throwing away the baby in the bathwater, because you have to remember that even in this list, you have 15 career ambassadors who spent decades in the Nigerian Foreign Service, and who will, it's a balance, 15 career ambassadors and the others who haven't been in the diplomatic circle. Are you saying they won't move the needle in any way or promote Nigeria's best interest?
I think we're saying similar things here. Again, my argument is not questioning the competence or capabilities of the people that are being appointed. We can have that debate on another day, but I don't want to focus on that because it's really and truly doesn't move the needle for me. My argument is, the current state of our foreign policy as a country has been weakened over the last decade. We no longer hold the kind of influence we used to hold in the continent. We no longer have the kinds of resources that we used to have to influence issues across the continent. And again, if you go through our foreign policy objectives, which I clearly articulated earlier on, whether it's Africa being at the centerpiece of our foreign policy objective, whether it's economic diplomacy, whether it's supporting and rescuing Nigerians all across the world, you will see that our country over the last decade has failed spectacularly spectacularly in all of these measures, and to expect a list of 30 ambassadors to turn around the needle in such a short period of time, I think it's going to be wishful thinking. We have to do the heavy lifting of repositioning our country, whether it's reputationally or otherwise, in terms of economic might or military might, to earn the respect that we once had in the 70s during Murtala or during Obasanjo, or perhaps in the early 1990s when the continent actually listened to what we had to say. And then we can start talking about the quality of ambassadors that we're posting to many of these countries. You ask yourself, we're dealing with a serious security challenge in the Sahel region. What are the ambassadors who are going to be posted to these countries going to do about it? We have a serious international reputational crisis, for instance. You ask yourself the question, the people that we're going to be posting in many of these European and Western countries, what are they going to do to effectively change the narrative? And then when you look at our capabilities and capacity, you see that very little is going to be achieved on that particular scorecard. So focusing on the list of 30, if I remember correctly, is not going to take us anywhere, because they are not going to be able to do as much as we expect them to do, largely because of where our country is at this particular point in time. And that's why I'm not focusing on the quality or otherwise of the people who have been nominated. I'm trying to focus more on the capacity of our country, to impose our objectives, to impose our ideals on even the continent or the sub-region, not to talk more of the entire world.
Okay, Mr. Adio has highlighted the fact that whether it's 30 or whoever is on that list, it's much like it's going to be a tough one to crack in terms of repositioning Nigeria to its glory days, whether you like it or not. Those are some of the points he's made. But let's bring it back here into the studio. I mean, we initially had talked about some of the names that were on the list of nominees. Do you also believe that some of these names on the list, one way or the other, will impact negatively on how a cross-section of Nigerians view this current presidency?
Well,
based on the fact that, take for instance, some of the names are names who have been very critical about this government, but of course they are being enlisted. Also, that's one. Secondly, some of the names you have there on that list are names of people who have been in public service for years, whereas you have professionals who have been there and have not had a shot at this.
Okay, well, the fact of the matter is that these names that you said have been in public service, are these names that you have mentioned have been in public service, are they non-entities or people who have made their own, who have excelled in their own chosen field before going to public service? Somebody in public service can be a medical doctor, can be an engineer. The fact that he has spent a large part of his life serving the public does not take away his professional expertise. So that is what I'm saying. Anybody taking us back to, our glorious days. Those were days when we had, continental issues to focus on. Those were the days of apartheid, when Nigeria took the front seat. Where is the apartheid going on anywhere in the world again? As at today, the reality confronting us is that the Nigerian state is focusing on how to, enhance our internal capacity. And this is an administration that has always been going out there telling people come and invest in Nigeria, looking at how we can, change the economy for good, looking at how we can tackle insecurity. You talk about insecurity, for example. You are talking about the 70s, the 80s, when military rule was the dominant system of government. You're talking about our collaboration, our non-collaboration with states in the Sahel. These are states that have decided to, go against the rules of engagement of ECOWAS that they are a member of. Because the rules of engagement in ECOWAS is that no country will be governed other than through the ballot box. And when, these military renegades took over power in these countries, and ECOWAS were trying to lobby to, negotiate with them to ensure that they return back the country to constitutional democracy, they said no. And there's little or nothing Nigeria as a country alone can do other than through the sub-regional body. So in this case, the the embassies and the high commissions that these persons will be posted to are embassies and commission peopled or that are being run by career civil servants. The ambassador is just like the political head. Don't forget. The ambassador is going to implement policies that the home government, through the foreign ministry, has decided, to implement. So I see no reason why anybody will say, because I'm a medical doctor, I've been in public service, though, that I should give other people who have not been opportune to serve in public service, a shot. No, power is not given a la carte. Any person who wants to aspire to lead the public must throw his hat into the ring. They don't beg people.
So someone like Senator Jimo Ibrahim, who's currently is sitting senator,
yes,
is also on that list.
Well, absolutely. If the government finds him worthy to occupy that position in conjunction with the office he presently occupies, why not? But don't also forget that the fact that you have been appointed today does not take away the fact that if tomorrow your scorecard is examined and you are not up and doing, you can be changed. So, but for somebody to become a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you and I know very well that, like we say in our local parlance, not be moi now. He must have been, he is a person that thousands of persons have entrusted their destiny into their hands to go and represent them. So that type of person must be taken seriously in whatever position he's appointed into.
Now back to Ayodele, Lawal, Adio, away from personalities, and you've said it that you don't want to discuss personalities. So let's talk about Nigeria's foreign policy thrust and the current situation our country finds itself in. Never in the history of Nigeria has Nigeria been threatened with invasion by another country, and I'm talking about the United States of America, where President Trump threatened to go in all guns a-blazing if we don't fix up. Having said that, you also mentioned the interesting matter of the Sahel. There's an African saying that says if your neighbor's house is on fire, you can't go to bed and sleep. And Mr. Nelson Ekujimi here did mention that we're no longer in the 70s and 80s where we're fighting for apartheid, independence of African countries. Our policy, foreign policy thrust seems to move more into diplomatic business diplomacy and trade deals in water view. But looking at 2025 Nigeria and the current situation we find ourselves in, and knowing that the current president of the United States, the deal maker, likes quid pro quo deals, what sort of ambassador or representation do we need in Washington to project our non-aligned stand and also our association with BRICS in a way that we're not losing sovereignty and we don't give out too much and gain little, knowing how the Trump presidency works. Kwame Nkrumah said, we neither look east or west, we look forward.
Well, taking from your last point, I think we also did that, effectively in the 1970s when we pursued a non-allied objective, especially with the Cold War that was ongoing at that particular point in time. And despite the fact that we were non-allied at that particular point in time, we still earned the respect of both the West and the Eastern Bloc at the time, because our foreign policy objective was clear. We pursued it with vigor. We had quality diplomats who were posted to many of this country who pursued that vision with clarity. And you could see the successes that we achieved over that particular period of time. The second point you mentioned about whether these diplomats are going to be career diplomats or otherwise. The truth is, if you look at the list of Nigeria's star ambassadors, if you want to put it that way, over a 40-year period, you will see that these individuals, have largely been academics or career diplomats who know their onions and achieved a great deal. And very few, if any at all, were actually politicians, whether you're talking about Ibrahim Calvin Gambari, Joe Garba, Adebo Akonde, Olu Adeniji, and the likes, Joy Ogu, for instance, Atom Banefo, these were diplomats who held their own, and discharged their duties for their country, professionally, at the time where they had their assignments cut out for them. And the truth is, the point that, we are no longer facing apartheid in South Africa, or whether, we no longer have the issues that we had in Liberia or in Sierra Leone, and so we cannot respond in the same way that we responded in the 70s and the 90s. The truth is, there's an underlying factor that remains consistent, across all of these challenges that we face on a continental level. But the missing link today is that Nigeria has always risen to leadership in many of those instances in the 70s and the 90s. But today we seem to be faltering in that leadership. And I ask you, for instance, you mentioned that in your introduction when you said, what kind of challenges are we facing in 2025? And I'll tell you, today, we have one of the lowest GDP per capita income across the continent, which makes us one of the poorest people across the world. We suffer one of the highest levels of insecurities and terrorist activities within our borders. Now, on these two particular challenges alone, they are not only threatening our national sovereignty or our territorial integrity, but they are also threatening the very lives and livelihoods of our people. So I throw the question back to you. What have we done on a continental region to advance the economic advantage of the average Nigerian? I'll remind you that, for instance, we have a continental free trade agreement on this continent that has been lingering for long. What kind of leadership has Nigeria provided to ensure that that free trade continental deal comes to life? Your answer is as good as mine. On the security scorecard, I ask you again, what have we done as a country in the last decade to deal with the lingering issues across the Sahel, which is directly threatening our national sovereignty as we speak today? Because the challenges that we're facing in northern Nigeria and in many pockets of our country is partly the porosity of our borders and the weakness of our foreign policy objective in that region, and our lack of ability to cooperate with heads of states, in particularly Niger, Chad, and many of these countries where this terrorists flowing from. And the argument that, they are military heads of states, and so that explains our reason to step back from engaging them, I think is a bit misplaced, because even the democratic beacon of the world, United States, have deals with countries that are run by dictators, as long as it advances their foreign interest. So why aren't we on the table with neighbors who are directly have impact on our national security architecture, whose borders, who we share borders with, porous borders, by the way, who impact directly on our sovereignty? I mean, it's no excuse. So again, it goes back to my earlier argument. We have to go back to the fundamentals and get our leadership right to the point wherein we can project clarity in terms of our objectives, and we can pursue these objectives with vigor, and then we can staff many of our embassies and stations across the world with quality people that can effectively pursue these objectives. At the moment, I dare anyone to tell me and show me the clarity of what this objective is, to show me what our plan is in the Sahel, to show me what our plan is on an economically diplomatic front, to show me what we are projecting across the entire world. And then, we are here bickering about the people who are going to be doing what. It means nothing to me, because at the end of the day, even if you staff it with me, Nelson, and you, nothing is going to change fundamentally, because we're neither here nor there. We're not cold, we're not hot, and what happens, as the good book says, we're often spit out of the mouth, and that's where the real problem is. It's a question of leadership, and we have lacked that for the last decade.
All right, so I think we can get a clear understanding here that your stance is made clear. No matter what the names are, whoever is going to take on this role, leadership is lacking, and that has trickled down to the impact on how Nigeria is actually progressing on the continental and international phase or stage. But let me come back to Mr. Nelson in the House. here with us in the studio. Let's quickly just touch on one last thing, because this is, we're almost out of time. The nominees are out. It's going to go to the National Assembly, the Senate. They take a look at it. Nigerians are also concerned that the Senate is, they've tagged it as a rubber stamp assembly, the 10th, whereby scrutinies are not done, questions are not really asked. Rather, it's just a case of, okay, it comes from the president, therefore, I let it go. And by the way, take a bow and move on. And don't forget, too, that the national anthem in the assembly has been replaced with a political anthem as well. So many have said, because of all these things, the indices are indeed showing that whatever has been sent to the National Assembly is as well as approved.
Well, thank you very much. It's unfortunate that we live in an era where when people see a man with his wife on the streets showing love to one another, they call it, they say in our local language, I'm a Yoruba man, they will tell you, Otifunle Foje, he has given him vegetables, that the man has become a jellyfish. But when they see the man, every morning when they see the wife beating black and blue with his face, swollen, oh, strong man, he's showing his masculinity. That's the type of society we are. When institutions of state perform their responsibility, oh, rubber stamp. Don't forget, when any list gets to the National Assembly, there's always a committee that will go through that list before the list comes back to the House for a general debate. So that list, or whatever bill the executive sends to the National Assembly, a lot of persons, either through mischief or through ignorance, they just think when a bill or a list comes from the president, that it will just land on the table of the Senate President or the Speaker of House of Representatives and he throws it to vote. Absolutely not. That is not how legislature works. It goes through a lot of processes. A committee will be started with that responsibility. It is that committee that will put the recommendations, and it will come to a vote in the National Assembly. So when persons have decided that because the National Assembly today is on the same page with the executive, that it has become a rubber stamp, oh well and good, so long as the National Assembly is focused on its responsibility of collaborating and cooperating with the executive and the other arm of government to deliver on the dividend of democracy to the Nigerian people. I'm home and dry with that
so
appellation.
Your expectations are that all the nominees that are sent to the National Assembly should pass without
No, I've just told you the names that have been sent to the National Assembly will go through a screening committee. Yes. So it is not for me to tell the National Assembly that is the highest lawmaking.
From your own point of view,
yes.
Look at your glance at the list.
Yes.
There shouldn't be any problems with any of the nominees.
I expect, except if there are some information that I'm not privy to, yes. Because I know the National Assembly will not just take the list on its face value and just say, we take a bow. Absolutely not. We must be factual when we come to public space to discuss, and not run with the mob.
Well, don't forget too that, you just mentioned the committee. It was the same committee in 2017 during Muhammadu Buhari's, the late president, who had also appointed elected nominees into federal government agencies who were dead.
That is to show you the human error that can happen at any point in time. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
If somebody who is dead has been mistakenly included in that list, on the day of screening, when they call his name, at least the dead man will not wake up to attend the screening. Definitely his name will be struck off the list. So I don't think that should be a problem, except if you are looking for a society people by saints, where people cannot make errors. And I don't know, but I believe such can only exist.
Do you think there will be a reversal? Just because we've seen many reversals. Reversal on the NTA issue, reversal on the presidential reversal on Dubai issue, and so on and so forth.
Any government policy, any responsible government, no decision of government is cast in gold. A government can take a decision this morning and, factors or reasons change within a twinkling of an eye. Don't forget, as a government, information comes to the table every second. Just like I told people, I've been an election observer in the last almost 3 decades now. And I've told people that, look, when election, on the day of election in the morning, Immediately they deploy materials. They are taking information from every quarter. If there's any reason to believe the election will be compromised, you remember what happened in 2019 or 2015, where in the middle of the election was called off. Because of information that came that, look, the election is not going the way we planned. So don't assume because you are a government or because you are human. It is only, like we say, I'm a Yoruba man. Let me also remind you, it is only God that we say is Awima Yehu. The one who talks and does not change it. But if it is man, except you are deluding yourself.
Okay. All right. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Nelson Ekujimi, and also Ayodele Lawal Adio. We did enjoy your insight and analysis on this subject, and we wait to see how this pans out. If all of them will get the clearance from the National Assembly. Thanks again for your time.